Hello and welcome to Virtual Investor Conferences. My name is Bob Power, and on behalf of OTC Markets, as well as our co-host, Social Suite, we're very pleased you've joined us for our next live presentation from Archer Exploration Corporation, a Canadian exploration and development company focused on nickel, copper, cobalt, and platinum group elements. Please note, you can submit questions in the box to the left of the slides, and you can also view a company's availability for one-on-one meetings through the Schedule Meetings tab found on the conference platform. At this point, I'm very pleased to welcome Tom Meyer, President and CEO of Archer Exploration Corporation, which trades on the OTCQB venture market under the symbol RCHRF and on the CSE under the symbol RCHR. Welcome, Tom.
Thank you very much, Bob. And hello, everyone. I'm very excited to walk you through the Archer exploration story and introduce the company to many of you. The first slide is our standard disclaimer, which I will let you read at your leisure. So Archer Exploration. We are a nickel sulfide focused exploration and development company. So I'll characterize it as two key assets. Our flagship asset is the Grasset project located in Quebec, Canada. It's 100% owned by Archer, and we have an existing resource of 5.5 million tons at 1.53% nickel equivalent. And this is located in the very prolific camp of the Abitibi Greenstone Belt. And we characterize it as it's an asset with lots of room to grow. The other key asset for us is located in Sudbury, and that is our very large, again, nickel sulfide project. We have just short of 40 properties. It's a very large and a very strategic portfolio, and it's located in the world-renowned Sudbury Basin. And I'll explain more on that in upcoming slides. So the idea with those assets, generally speaking, they are untested potential. So the objective for us is to grow the resource at Grasset, which was really came out of, I'll provide a bit more detail, but it came out of one drill program through 2014, 2015, and into 2016. And it's located along a 23-kilometer belt of very favorable ultramafic rocks. So we anticipate we will be looking and finding and have success with finding more of these nickel sulfides. We are located in a very mining-friendly jurisdiction, both in Quebec and in Ontario. We have a very favorable exploration tax incentives from the Canadian government and very strong working relationships with our First Nations communities. So in Sudbury, the First Nations community have been working next to, in the Sudbury camp, over 135 years of mining activity, and in Quebec, there's a long history of the First Nations working with the industry in Quebec. So that's a very positive and key point for us. We have a very strong team, which I'll get into a bit later in the presentation. It's a very diverse skill set and a long track record of activity in the mining space. Myself, I'm a metallurgist by training. My early years was actually spent in nickel production in the Sudbury camp, both with what the company's known now as Glencore and Valley, and in the old days they were known as Inco and Falconbridge. And then we're not going to spend a lot of time on the market tailwinds, but the macro environment over the medium and to the long term is very positive for nickel and the metals that we're exploring for. There's growing demand for clean energy technologies, electric vehicles. So many people are familiar with how Elon Musk and Tesla's kind of disrupted that market over the last years, and it's increasing demand for these electric vehicles. And in particular, battery metals, which require our main focus of attention, nickel. So we've got the macro environment working in our favor, a phenomenal asset base, and expect a lot of opportunities for that to grow as we test the potential to further expand. So I'll orient you. So we are located in Canada. So the globe on the top left of this map, that green dot shows the approximate location of our portfolio in Canada. And then to zoom in, Sudbury, Ontario. We call that Northern Ontario, and it shows the U.S. border there. And Sudbury, we have the third largest land package in what is well known as the second largest nickel district in the world. Just short of 40 properties, over 300 kilometers squared of prospective land. Our Grasset flagship asset in Quebec, to the top right of this map, the green there is just showing this Abitibi greenstone belt, and you could see these X's and stars are historic projects, mining operations, but we're well located in terms of the camp, and we've got this starting resource of 5.5 million tons at 1.53% nickel equivalent, and looking to grow and expand that. Archer as a company, most I've observed in the market, it's a very challenging market for resource companies. So the price chart on the right of this slide, just showing that we've kind of sold off in kind of concert with the commodity complex in general. I think it's fair to say that there's a trade underway right now that has doubts on the global growth outlook and concerns what interest rates do. Obviously, this is from our viewpoint. We've got the long term in mind with the 5 to 7 year view. So this is just kind of a temporary depressed market, which inevitably will return. As our corporate structure goes, the capital structure, about 91 million shares outstanding, 110 million fully diluted. At the end of March, we had a cash balance of $9 million Canadian. And as of July the 13th, when the shares were trading at 13 cents Canadian, it worked out to an enterprise value of about $3 million. So a very depressed market. And I will mention that when this transaction was put together for us, Archer, in acquiring the nickel assets, the deemed consideration for the portfolio of nickel assets that we have in our control was with a deemed consideration of $50 million Canadian. So along with the share price depression, just generally in the capital markets as it relates to many of the resource related companies, we've kind of traded down in line with many of them. So, but just points to the opportunity from a valuation standpoint, notwithstanding what we have in terms of the pipeline, in terms of adding value. Insiders and advisors, associates were just short of 9%, 10%. Wallbridge is our cornerstone shareholder as related to this transaction and putting this nickel portfolio together. They have a 19.9% interest, and then between retail and high net worth, that's the balance of the share register. A few more details on the Grasset project, which is our cornerstone asset, and we characterize it as it's an unexplored opportunity. And we've got the existing resource of 5.5 million tons. Very little work, in our opinion, was done on this. It was a 2012 vintage discovery. The previous owner was a company called Balmoral Resources, which was acquired. Wallbridge Mining acquired Balmoral mainly for its gold assets. So the nickel assets kind of sat in the background. So at the time, when Balmoral made that discovery in 2012, they followed it up with a solid drill campaign, which resulted in effectively this 5.5 million ton resource, but literally just scratching the surface. So much more room to grow, in our opinion. So we're beyond the idea that this is a kind of a grassroots early stage exploration. It's somewhat advanced, that we're growing from an existing resource. So that's very exciting. This is a 23-kilometer trend of favorable ultramafic rocks for potentially hosting more nickel deposits. Nickel, I'll just characterize somewhat complicated. In addition to finding a needle in the haystack as it relates to finding a large high-grade nickel sulfide deposit through the geology, the work that's done on the geology side. Once you have that discovery in hand, the next challenge for many nickel projects is just finding a way to extract and bring that nickel to market. And one of the fortunate things for Archer, and as it relates to the Grasset project, is that the metallurgy is relatively simple. Nickel in general has faced a number of challenges on the processing front for some companies, for many companies, but we're quite fortunate. The preliminary work that's been done on the metallurgy side is that it does yield a high-grade nickel concentrate that could be sold. And we're not too far from Sudbury, which is the home of 2 smelting operations. So we would be looking at a conventional flow sheet as we further explore and develop our Grasset project. So that's a key positive for Archer as it relates to our Grasset project. And again, the other aspect with mining is that we're fortunate that we're not too far from existing infrastructure, be it power or a paved highway. So these are roads, and we're a little over 100 miles from the next town. So we do have road access to our camp for exploration. We can bring in tractors, trailers, whatever we need by highway. We're not flying things in. So that makes it somewhat relatively inexpensive from the exploration side. But when we think about developing this project into a mine in future years, we're not constrained by having to spend a lot of money in developing infrastructure to execute on our growth plans. So that's another key positive aspect for Archer as it relates to our Grasset project. Now we've got room to grow. So Grasset is our starting project, and the objective is, and I'll show you on an upcoming slide, the opportunity and how we're going to grow that resource. But just to highlight that we've got 23 kilometers of largely unexplored, favorable geologic trend. The map on the left, it's a geophysics map that just highlights how the some of these deposits show up, and just showing this red highlighted, this Grasset VTEM conductor. So that's over the existing resource. There are other conductors in the area that are worthy of follow-up on the drill side. So just this map, this slide is basically just telling us that we've got a large unexplored territory. We've got geophysics that suggests that there's more to find and more to follow up on. And then further refining just a little bit more detail on the prospectivity as it relates here is, again, reiterating, we've got this fertile trend, and I highlight on this slide here, there's our Grasset project on the bottom right, and there's our central discovery, which has about 9 drill holes that is worthy of follow-up. Likely start looking at that in detail in next year. But in the meantime, our focus has been on using the exploration drilling to further define and expand the resource. The existing resource of 5.5 million tons is carried in these 2 red lines here. So we call them H1 horizon and H3. So this is a surface projection of the deposits, of the mineralized horizons. And then on the left here is showing a 3D isometric of the kind of the shape. So the bigger green blob is the H3 deposit, and then that little sliver there is just the existing resource of the H1. But the H1 mineralized horizon is it's more extensive than H3. It's about a 900 meter, about a little more, about approximately half, a little bit more than half a mile. And H3 is a little bit smaller, about a little bit more than a quarter mile in terms of strike length. And then the next slide, I'll be showing how it looks underground. So this is a slice through H3. So if you look on the section on the right-hand side, so H3 and H1, and this is a slice through. So starting at the surface, we have glacial till of 50 to 85 meters of glacial till. So this is just sand and rock, and one of the reasons why these deposits weren't discovered earlier, and it took till 2012 to find them, was that they were accidentally discovered. So they're buried. So there's no outcrop. But as we're looking at H3, we're seeing it steeply dipping. It's extending at depth, and similarly H1. So that 5.5 million ton resource is really, it's defined only down to about 600 meters. But the deepest intercept drilled to date was down to 775 meters, and that encountered 2.76% nickel. So versus our existing resource of 5.5 million tons at 1.53% nickel equivalent, we're observing higher grade, and it's a relatively narrow width, about half a meter, but at a greater depth. So our strategy has been to focus on drilling and expanding this resource beneath these existing H3, what's known with the H3 and H1. So that's how we've been spending our time over, from the season when we kicked off our drill program back in February. And what's interesting is that the bulk of the existing resource is in a disseminated nickel sulfide, and that's shown on the left here with this picture of the core. So the top part is a representative of a disseminated nickel sulfide in our deposit. And normally you would get some segregation. We picture that these vertical were once horizontal flows of just pictures like flows of lava, and then combining with the sulfur, you would have a sulfide segregation. So at the top, you would have a settling out, and then into a layer of massive sulfide at the bottom. And the massive sulfide is ideally what we're chasing, because when you get into the massive sulfides, you quickly move from 1 to 1.5% nickel to greater than 14% nickel. So that's quite exciting, and a key focus of our targeting is to find more of the massive sulfides. And typically you can chase the disseminated and find, if you're lucky, find more of the massive sulfides and quickly grow the resource, because it doesn't take many tons of the massive to add to the nickel units within the resource. And then just really quickly to show you, about 7 kilometers away, we've got another discovery, 9 holes in it. But this discovery, it's got a much larger stratigraphic package of favorable rocks with sources of nickel, sources of sulfur, and further follow-up is required. We do have some intercepts of close to 3.6% nickel over a meter. So Grasset, starting project in exploration potential, and the central discovery is more evidence of that there's more to be found, but that requires further follow-up to see if we can turn that into a resource. So in terms of the program for 2023, a little over $6 million budget was allocated early on, and again, mentioning looking for those discoveries at depth, and we're working initially with a pilot hole drilling program and directional drilling down to about 1,200 meters. We had some challenges with rock quality and being able to control the depth of the drilling and drilling into H3 and H1. So we reverted back to more of a high angle hole approach along with our geophysics and along with some glacial till reconnaissance, some base of till sampling, because as I mentioned, these deposits are blind, they're buried beneath the sand. So our sonic program is being used to generate a signature of the glacial till to further help us targeting up along that trend, and then the ground geophysics to better understand the geophysical signature. You saw the picture, the map of showing those highlighted in red blobs of the geophysical anomalies that we'll be following up. So expanding our geophysics understanding of the signature of Grasset. So 2023 program is essentially drilling, expansion of the resource at depth, ground geophysics, a glacial till reconnaissance, and that helps with targeting for the coming years of our program. So I'll just highlight for now, like bearing fruit. So this program from an execution standpoint has begun to bear fruit. We announced this very positive drill hole from hole number 3 a few weeks ago in mid-June. So proof of concept, drilling beneath H3 and into H1, and in this case we went into H1. We encountered 1.82% nickel over 4.6 meters, and then within that 4.6 meters we had 5.75% nickel. So, and that was only at a depth of 330 meters below surface. So this was drilled in an area that didn't see much attention for a number of reasons. And the Wayne one, the previous owner really ran out of time before they were acquired. So this is the location. So this is a longitudinal. So the sections which I showed you prior for H3 and H1 on the prior slides, this is a longitudinal. This is sliced in the other direction. The section that I showed previously was kind of sliced through in this direction. So looking at it from a longitudinal standpoint, so from end to end, so starting from the northwest to the southeast, northwest to the southeast, hole 3, that's the location, and this is just highlighting. It brings in a lot of interesting ideas for further follow-up for hole 3, which we will be doing in the coming months and seasons, but kind of opens up H1 in terms of the prospectivity at this end of the deposit and also being open at depth. But it's quite exciting that this kind of early on and such literally so early in our program to have that type of exploration success. So we're excited to find more, and it kind of opens up this idea that we've got the opportunity to grow that resource further. Switching focus, so we're moving out of Quebec. There's Grasset at the top right, and moving into our Sudbury land package. And just to highlight that we do have a very large land package. It's the 3rd largest, so we're behind Glencore and Valley. And as such a small company, it's a tremendous opportunity for us to look to harvest those best projects and add value. And for us, it's strategically significant. It's large, it's prospective, and it's underexplored. So if the ultimate arm wave for an exploration company is we're kind of in a phenomenal camp that's been around for over 130 years, and we've got a very large land package, and we're in a tier 1 jurisdiction to execute on our exploration success. So with the limited time that we have in this presentation, I'll just highlight that our high priority targets, our number 1 project here, most advanced, is this Parkin project. I'll just mention the names of some of the other targets that we have to look to follow up on, but is Windy Lake is quite prospective and excited to do work on that. And we also have Frost Lake, and these are around all interesting what we view as similar type of targets that are being developed and or mined by our large neighbors. But for us, it's early stage, and 80% of our focus is on Grasset, 20% on Sudbury, and we continue to do work on Sudbury in a very methodical way in order to add the value in a prioritized manner. I think many of you would appreciate that with such a large land package, it's key for us to be focused because we have many targets to choose from, and we're looking for targets that are in what we call industry significant. And just as an example, that industry significant is our neighbor Glencore. Their Onaping depth deposit is 14.5 million tons at 1.6% nickel equivalent. So the concept that we have will be chasing and exploring for 10 to 15 million ton nickel deposits in this camp. But we'll be doing this in a very methodical way in the coming work seasons. But in the meantime, our focus is on Grasset. I'll jump to our leadership team. I'm President and CEO, and as mentioned, I'm a metallurgist by training, and I spent a lot of time in capital markets. In kind of mid-career, early career was with from the technical side and on the engineering side, and working for an engineering firm, and also in the early part with Inco and Falconbridge, both nickel companies. Our VP Exploration, Jacques Gauthier, over 40 years experience across the globe, and a tremendous asset for us. Our CFO and our VP Corp Development, seasoned mining executives, tremendously focused on adding value for our shareholders. So there's great alignment, great experience, and then we're kind of backed by a very seasoned and very strong board. Our chairman, David Cobbold, an investment banker currently with Macquarie's, a tremendous amount of experience that brings to bear. And I will highlight Walbridge Mining owns 19.9% of Archer. And with that 19.9%, there's two board members, Mars Cord, who's the CEO, and Brian Penny, the CFO, and they bring their experience to bear, and very helpful for Archer and how we move this company forward. So I'll wrap this formal part of the presentation up now, and I will entertain questions. The first question is, what is your relationship with Walbridge? So Walbridge owns 19.9% of Archer. They have two board seats, and they're supportive of Archer in our nickel exploration objectives. And as an example of that, not only do they provide input at the board level, but in terms of on the operational front, we have secondment agreements, so we can leverage some of their expertise on a secondment basis, which is cost effective for Archer. And then as it relates to our exploration program, we use the Walbridge Fenelon camp to kind of stage and also house our drilling and our geology teams. So it's a close, positive working relationship with Walbridge. Next question, who do you consider peers and what differentiates Archer? So there's 30 seconds to answer that question. Our peers are nickel sulfide focused exploration and development companies, of which they're rare in the grand scheme of things. I will highlight from a Canadian context, I think some good ones would be Magna Mining. They're active in Sudbury, and the other one would be Talon Metals, the Tamarack project in Michigan. I'll leave it there. I'm out of time, but I very much thank you for your attention. Look for more information at our website, archerexploration.com. Thank you very much.